I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to order at 3 p.m. Y'all, please rise for the prayer and the pledge.
Roll call, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call. The sheet is open. And please let the record reflect that all 9 members of the commission are here. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God, to our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right. Amen.
Amen.
After Dr. Gui, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
We'll wait test, Glory.
All right. Ms. Barr, moving down the agenda, please.
Item 2, executive session. There is not. Item 3, status report by the Executive Port Director. Mr. Chairman, I do have a public comment to read on this item.
Certainly. Please proceed.
This comment is from Mr. Donald Valet, 109 Nancy Court, Belle Chase, Louisiana, 70037. His comment is, there is no report attached or furnished to public to review or comment. Please have staff make public post to its website or furnish in sufficient time. Thank you. There's a question.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sanders.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. Follows as my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 15 to 27 January 2021. There's little to report during this period that is not related to topics covered by non-disclosure agreements. That being said, we are arranging Port Way Ahead conferences with board members for the latter part of next week, and we'll send out a sign-up list no later than close of business tomorrow. In light of the queries at the last port board meeting regarding the artifacts found on the Plaquemines liquid terminal site that are presently being curated by the University of New Orleans under the tutelage of Dr. Ryan Gray, Professor of Anthropology within the Anthropology and Sociology Department, a visit was arranged for a port delegation to see firsthand the protocols and procedures undertaken while conducting a curation project. Attending were Commissioners Roussel, LaFrance, Blank, and Konovich, along with Deputy Port Director Paul Matthews, who arranged the visit. At this point, I will ask, because it is in Mr. LaFrance's district, Mr. LaFrance, would you care to make any comments regarding the visit?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Would any of the other attending commissioners like to add anything?
Nothing at this moment.
Okay. All right. This leads me to an item on today's agenda, that being the procedures from Dr. Gray regarding the manner items are curated. Another item on the agenda today is from Mr. Craig Mize with Tallgrass Energy, whose company is locating their project on the Plaquemines liquid terminal site, and Mr. J. Prather with ELOS, the company contracted by Tallgrass to assist in the environmental process. They will explain their procedures and protocols as it pertains to artifacts discovered on the project site. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the audience? All right. You can please proceed with the guests that are going to speak.
Oh, yeah, okay. Craig, this is Mr. Craig Mize, and Mr. Jay Prather. Craig is with Tallgrass, Jay is with ELOS. And prior to their comments, Mr. Chairman. We also asked Dr. Ryan Gray if he could be here today. He could not, so he asked me if I would read this statement. So bear with me, okay, Greg? It was requested of me for a brief statement what we do as the curators of the collection for a meeting. Here's a short statement that I had put together when we are conducting a curation of artifacts such as those found on the Plaquemines liquid terminal site. The University of New Orleans archaeological, you know what I'm trying to say, lab, acting as deputy custodial facility for the state of Louisiana, is providing curatorial services for the collection of artifacts recovered by ELOS Environmental from the St. Rosalie Plantation Site, 16 Papa Lima 107 in Plaquemines Parish. Our role as the curation facility consists primarily of organizing and inventorying the collection to ensure that it is stored in a manner that meets the standards of the Louisiana Division of Archaeology and the Secretary of the Interior, as specified in 36 Charlie Foxtrot Romeo 79, and that the collection is made available for future researchers and interested parties. In practical terms, this means that we are in the process of reviewing all of the documentation that was submitted to us, evaluating the conditions of the materials and the accuracy of artifact descriptions, and matching them to a box-by-box inventory of the collection. The collection consists mainly of artifacts typical of a plantation site in southeastern Louisiana, i.e., bits of pottery, glass, nails, and other metal hardware, buttons, pipe stems, etc. Based on our inspection of the collection so far, no human remains were transferred to us, and it is our understanding that any human remains recovered during the ELOS investigation were returned to the site. We agreed to accept this particular collection because we believe that the St. Rosalie site is extremely significant in the area's history. The Archaeology Lab at the University of New Orleans is a center for multidisciplinary research in material culture, history, archaeology, anthropology, and the environment in southeastern Louisiana, with archaeological collections curated and maintained by the facility serving as a core component of this research. We emphasize public interpretation and engagement through partnerships with museums, community organizations, visual artists, federal and state recognized Native American tribes, and government agencies. We hope that we can continue to work with Plaquemines Parish government, local museums, and other interested parties to help interpret the site and explore the history of Plaquemines Parish in the 19th century, especially as it is related to those enslaved on a plantation and to those who continue to work and live there on them in the period after the emancipation. Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan Gray. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig. Peace.
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
Peace.
And thank you for having us. My pleasure to be here. My name's Craig Meese. I'm Vice President, Tallgrass Energy out of Lakewood, Colorado. God, thank you. This is my first business trip since COVID began, so I actually got to get out of the office. I appreciate that. I'm joined by Jay Prather, President of ELOS. ELOS has been responsible for the Phase 2 investigation that's ongoing on the site, the cultural investigation that's taken place on the site, and another two gentlemen in the audience that are here certainly to answer questions as well. Flynn is the project manager, and Walter is the lead archaeologist for ELOS. I want to take the opportunity, just since I have the mic here as well, to address in December, I know we met with a few of you virtually to kind of give an update, project update. I wanted to extend a little bit of that relative to just what's changed relative to Tallgrass, to take advantage of the full board here and share kind of what's going on relative to Tallgrass. Tallgrass Energy was acquired, if you will, by Blackstone Investments a little over a year ago. In fact, probably close to 2 years now. Last April, we went from a public company to a private company. Blackstone took us private. So we've had a change, if you will, relative to the makeup of our executive team. Many of those members were past Tallgrass employees, so it's not new executives per se, but they are new to their role. Nonetheless, it's been a change relative to Tallgrass, and you add that relative to COVID. That's changed some of our progress that we would have liked to have made, as you might imagine, relative to this project and to even the investigation taking place on site. With that said, I just wanted to say we appreciate the partnership of the port. We very much appreciate the cooperation, coordination, collaboration with Paul and Sandy. They've been instrumental in our activities. We certainly have been very fortunate to have their cooperation and communication relative to this project. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to ELOS. They're the experts relative to this. I know several of you were able to look at some of the artifacts. Obviously, our mission with this site, we've spent close to $1 million on this Phase 2 investigation. We're getting ready to spend some more money relative to that in response to the State Historic Preservation Office for doing some additional work on the site. So it is an ongoing Phase 2 investigation. More information certainly will come out as this investigation continues, and we have every intention of sharing that information when is appropriate, because it's our goal to preserve and protect any and all of those artifacts that we find. And certainly the integrity of that site is imperative. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jay, and if he wants to introduce the other two gentlemen, I'll let him do that. Thanks.
Thank y'all for having you. My name is Jay Prather. I'm Vice President of ELOS, representing Tallgrass. We are doing the 404 and Section 10 permit as required by those laws. We were mandated to do a Phase 2. We found about a little less than 13,000 artifacts that y'all have seen. We're currently working to complete the Phase 2. We have some additional tasks that must be done. And that's where we are today. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes. Yesterday when we was at UNO, we spoke to Dr. Gray. Dr. Gray told us that the human remains, the bones, was brought back to the site and buried on site. Do you have the date when that happened?
I do not have it at the moment, but we can give it to you. That was cataloged and so forth.
Please do.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Newberry?
Yeah, the sheriff was on site for that as well, but we can get you those dates with ease.
Do you plan on having that site where the human remains was found? Do you expect to petition that off?
So at this time, we're kind of working through that. It's still a little early to say that, but it has been Tallgrass's stance to preserve and protect.
Thank you.
Commissioner Newberry?
So are you saying that, do you know the date on when these artifacts were found? So you don't have that date, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry, we don't have it with us, but we can get it very easily. It's all cataloged. We can give you that.
Okay, well, this is something new to the board that we just found out this past year. So was this discovered in the year of 2020?
So, and again, this is my knowledge. I would tell you that, or my memory, I should say. I apologize for saying that. It would have been in 2020, correct?
Okay, and so when you guys found the artifacts in the bones, is there someone special that y'all contacted, or did y'all just pick up the artifacts and bring them? What was y'all process? Can you explain the process to us?
Yes, ma'am. So the Sheriff's Department, of course, was first notified right off the bat. We had contact with SHPO, being the lead agency, and worked through that with them to make sure that we followed the proper process.
Okay, thank you.
There's guidelines set forth by the State Historic Preservation Office. As soon as it was found, me and my team went through every step of that, and we can show it to you, but everything was followed. And we even had the sheriff on site for one of the sites just to make sure.
Thank you.
The human remains obviously were identifiable on the site.
I'm sorry, Councilman Roussel, say that again.
The human remains that were located obviously were identifiable on the site, therefore the need to call for the sheriff's office?
Walter, I'll let you, that's correct? Yes. Correct, Councilman.
So they had to be more than just a fragment.
It's a femur, a bone fragment, in an area that they were able to, our archaeologists were trained in that, and we actually had a bone archaeologist on site from Tulane during this because of our permit that we had, and he was able to identify it.
And so the remains were moved to Tulane for further study?
No, so the remains were buried on site.
Were they removed prior to being reburied?
Yeah.
One of the remains were removed so it could go through further analysis at Tulane by Dr. Verano. The remaining human fragments were reburied on site after being identified by the same Dr. Verano.
So where were they held in the meantime while they being identified at Tulane?
They were being held at Tulane, and they followed all the right procedures to hold the bones, double locked doors, climate controlled, everything like that. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner LaFrance?
Yes. If this would happen again in the near future, would y'all follow the same procedures?
Yes, sir.
Could we expect to be notified, this commission, to be notified by y'all?
If that's the pleasure of you, yes, sir, we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kognovich?
Isn't there a law saying that human remains have to stay on site and that you can't remove them?
I'll let Walter speak to that. Yes, sir. However, if they're unidentifiable on site, they go to any bones that were found that are unidentifiable, go to the bone historian at Tulane. He notified it went immediately back to site.
Because from what I'm told, all of them went to Tulane, and since y'all said he identified some on site.
There was 3 bone fragments found on site. 2 of the bone fragments are one femur, and the one small that was unidentifiable on site that went to Tulane. When Tulane found out about it being human remains, it was brought back to the site and reburied immediately. The other was identified on site and reburied or covered immediately.
Because I know that law was in the permit you got from the state that no human remains could leave the site. Thank you.
If identifiable, yes, sir.
So when you say,
Hold on a second. Mrs. Newberry was in the queue.
I'll let Mr. Russo go first. I'll speak last.
so I guess I'm trying to get an understanding if they're identifiable as human or is they identifiable as an individual?
As human. There was a lot, as you can imagine, there's a large amount of bones on site from cattle and wild animals. So any that were unidentifiable were sent to Tulane. There's 2 that were found. One went to Tulane. It was found out immediately, brought back to site. The other was found and covered, identifiable, found and covered on site.
It's somewhat confusing to understand, I guess. If they're identified as human, then the law prohibits you from removing them from the site. But yet, on site, they were identified as human and sent to Tulane and then brought back?
No, sir.
That's
The bone that was removed that wound up being human was not identified on site. And then the 2 that were identified as human on site were left on site. The one, there was question as if it was human or not, and it had to go through further study at Tulane. That's why it was removed.
because I thought in the earlier question, when I had asked that if it was identified on site, how did you know it was human before you sent it in? And I thought you said that you had an expert that was trained in it that identified it as human, and you knew it was human on the site. So yeah, I'm confused.
For the first bone, the second bone, he wasn't sure, and he had to bring it in so he could do further study on it.
Thank you.
We apologize, Councilman. Yes, sir.
Mrs. Newberry?
I want to thank y'all for coming today. This is very interesting to hear about these artifacts. I didn't get the opportunity to go see, but, and I know we have a great museum down in Fort Jackson. I know Mr. Kognovich had talked about maybe displaying some of the artifacts. You know, we have a lot of history buffs here locally and through this country. So this would be a great way for us to let the people know that we have a museum open up to some interesting artifacts, and that's exciting. So I hope we get the opportunity to not also just display our artifacts, which may be impossible with you looking at 13,000, but just to at least have some pictures. Are y'all planning on taking some pictures at the end to show what we have in inventory?
So Tallgrass is still in the planning. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you guys. We have photos. We'll work with you.
And how long is this process for this to be curated?
Yes, ma'am. So we intend, I don't want to speak for the curation, but I'll speak from the reports side. We expect at least another 120 days at minimum to get through the phase 2.
All right, thank you.
Contracts for 99 years.
All right, I'm going to take the floor for a moment here. I'm scratching my head up here, wondering how human remains were found on the site. The Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office was called out to the site to document that, and then even, I'm assuming that they came back after the bones were studied for a little while, the human remains were studied for the reinterment, and yet the board had no clue that this was happening. And I'm directing this to the staff here, but I just want to make sure that this never, ever happens again. It created quite a bit of exposure for the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor Internal District. It created a large amount of distrust when community members had to bring the fact that there were human remains and also 2 cemeteries that are on site to us. I think we should have heard that from staff very early on, and there should have been an outreach plan with the adjacent community who those folks have ancestors that are buried there, to where we could work through this together to find a happy medium. There are laws against siting industrial sites on top of human remains, cemeteries, that kind of thing. There are laws about keeping human remains on site, and if there is a balance that can be found there, it's going to be done with thorough and deep, meaningful outreach engagement with that community there. And we're hoping that y'all can move forward along those lines.
Mr. Chairman, I've asked them that when they do discover this, that we are alerted right away. And then we, in turn, will alert you and the board.
Thank you. Mr. LaFrance.
Yes, I just want y'all to know that this was very alarming for the residents of Arlington. It's a black community less than a mile away from that site, and they are some of the descendants from some of the slaves that was on that plantation. So when they had really found out about it, they was truly upset. And again, that is my district, and those are the people who I represent. So I'm asking you, please, next time anything like that is found, that I will be personally notified about it.
That is correct, sir. And I just remind everyone that these sites are, you know, we need to make sure that we protect them and preserve them. And so I just caution that we work together.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Mark, did you try and contact ELOS to get this report?
Yeah, I contacted, and I don't remember his name offhand. And I was told that he couldn't give me any information because we don't own the property, which is not true. We do own the property.
Councilman, I apologize if you were told that you don't own the property. The current report is in a draft phase. In order to protect the integrity of the site, it is our procedure not to let this go out until it is finalized, and we have SHPO and the federal government's review of it.
I know all about it. I'm the president of the Historical Association and one of the historians for the parish, so I understand all that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Myers, thank you for bringing your team up today. We appreciate being able to shed some light on the issue.
And I guess just one final remark I'll make, you know, if there was some miscommunication here, certainly we'll take ownership of whatever that may be. I can assure you that as a result of the phase one work that was done out there relative to the historical documentation that exists for the site, that's what prompted the phase two investigation. Like I said, we've spent over $1 million at this point investigating that site and are very excited about the artifacts and the findings and being able to communicate and share that information with with Ironton, Plaquemines, et cetera. We're doing a lot of work that's going into the curation as well as the historical research on these artifacts and be able to share those with the museum. I guarantee you we're doing a lot of work for them to be able to do that. So I can assure you we're doing this all in partnership and cooperation. And if we didn't fully communicate it as we should have, to be honest with you, we were told by some in the Ironton community as well as this community that there potentially was a cemetery there. That's what prompted the phase two investigation. So I guess I didn't think it was not known that there were potentially artifacts there. It was because of those historical documents, conversations, et cetera, which prompted the phase two investigation. So believe me, our goal is preserve and protect that site or any artifacts found. So thank you for your time.
Thank you again. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Good afternoon, Reverend Edwards. Please state your name and address for the record.
Reverend Tyrone Edwards, 112 Thomas Lane of Phoenix, and an African-American historian. I'm really confused. I heard the letter that Sanders read from whoever this person was. I can't see how you can purchase a property and not have somebody tell you that this was a plantation. This plantation is recorded in history. And what makes this plantation a recorded history? Because it was an African-American who owned that plantation. So there's a lot of stuff on this plantation. So I can't see how when these people purchased this property, they didn't know that. And I can't see the people who saying they specialize in the stuff that they claim they specialize didn't know this. My question, the position that I take, I wonder if it was a white plantation, would the thing that happened to this plantation would have been done? I just have to ask that question. Because I can't see people with all the scientific knowledge and all that they had can think that a plantation can exist. And most people who understand anything about history know that on most all plantations there was a cemetery somewhere near. I mean, that's just some elementary knowledge that all historians should have. And so I was very disturbed about this. I'm very disturbed when you say you can see human remains and you can't see it, how you can take some and move some. You know, to me, this stuff stinks to the highest hell for me, you know. And I think it was really insult, you know, on all the African-American people who had family that was buried in that plantation. In 1981, I had the opportunity of interviewing Mr. Alfred Brooks, who was 100 years old, who talked about how he was raised on Rosalie Plantation and what life was about there. So, you know, Rosalie Plantation, when they purchased that property, they should have knew that. You know, so to me, I'm just wondering whether they give value to black life. I just have to take that position. I just have to take that position. And I know in the area we live, we don't like to talk about those kind of things. But to me, that's present on my mind. And to a lot of relatives that I talk to say, well, how can they move human remains? How can they? Person doing the investigation knew there was a law stating you can't move it. And I'm still questioning the integrity of people saying, well, we didn't know whether one was a human remain when they're supposed to be experts in that area. You know, how can you not know that? So to me, this whole process was an insult to all the people who have ancestors that was enslaved on that plantation, this whole process is a total disrespect and a disregard for black life and for black sanctity. So I have some serious problems that, you know, or this whole process, as an historian in Plaquemines Parish, who's opening up a museum in Plaquemines Parish, I really have some serious and I don't know what's going to happen to these 13,000 artifacts, because that wasn't a clear answer about we'll share the pictures with you, but not the artifact. So I'm still not clear what that means, you know, to the process. Yes.
Yesterday, talking to the professor, I asked if we could get the artifacts, and he said if there was anything in there that we wanted to display at the museum, we was welcome to do so. But
yeah, well, I'll keep in touch with you. But again, I want to say is that I'm disheartened by the whole process. I'm disheartened about the integrity of people claiming they're professional, the way they handle this. I just want to say that, to me, I am totally not satisfied with the process. I don't know the folks, but I question the integrity of this whole process.
Mr. Edwards, thank you for your passion. You know, we appreciate what you're saying here, and I'm sure Mr. Matthews is going to work closely with you in the future to make sure that you are involved in the next steps. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? How about from the audience? All right, hearing none. Moving down the agenda, Ms. Barb. Thank you all very much for y'all's time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion and update on the executive calendar, Commissioner Roussel.
That item will be deferred at this time.
Update by Plaquemines Liquid Terminal regarding artifacts. I guess we already did that. Financial report, budget to actual.
All right, please, Shambro.
Good afternoon. All Port Commissioners have been provided a draft 2020 total budget report and detailed budget report with actual expenditures shown as December 31st, 2020. Due to technical software and server issues this week, I have provided the board with a draft report for the year end 2020. Some edits will be made to the report provided. I will email the final report upon completion, and I will give a full financial report at the next board meeting discussing the final budget report. I have requested a budget amendment to be submitted for introduction, and that is basically to remove the grant revenues and expenditures from the 2020 budget for projects that have not begun in 2020, but will commence in 2021. And these projects have already been added and included in the 2021 budget, so we won't need to do any amendments to that. With all considered, I do think that the port has ended the year strong and productively. We have adjusted to survive and continue operations despite the effects the economy has had on the industry. And I would also like to inform that the 2021 original budget binders will be issued at the February 11th, 2021 meeting, and they will be available in the public libraries on that date as well.
Thank you, Shambrell. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions about the budget to actual from the audience? All right, hearing none.
Item 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Item 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
I have one.
We do have a few, Mr. Commissioner.
Say that. I'm sorry.
I do have a few, but
Please, go ahead.
First one is for Commissioner Blink. A resolution authorizing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to dispose of disused movable property, specifically to dispose of a 2012 Ford F-250 utility truck on an as-is, where-is basis, in accordance with Louisiana statutes governing the disposal of movable property owned by a political subdivision of the state and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. For Commissioner Newberry, a resolution affirming support for continued efforts towards construction of a container terminal within the jurisdiction of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and otherwise provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend and is amended to approve contract with Mercury Public Affairs and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. and for Commissioner Blink. An ordinance to amend and is amended the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District 2020 operating budget of revenue and expenditures and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That is it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Barb. All right, moving down the agenda, please.
Ordinances and resolutions on second and final reading. There is none under item 6A. 6B is being deferred at the request of Commissioner Newberry. I'm sorry, withdrawn. 6C, a resolution authorizing the port director or his designee to negotiate, sign, execute, and enforce the attached lease agreement between the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District and Plaquemines Parish government.
So this is a lease for the Popich building where the, oh, I'm sorry, I'd like to offer it. Seconded by Kognovich. So this is a lease for the Popich building that the port has office space in. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, Mrs. Newberry, please.
I have a copy of the agreement and I have some blanks here. Underneath section 2, we need to fill in some dates, or is that going to be automatically filled in after?
You're right, you got it. You filled in.
Or am I missing some dates?
Sure, we're going to do that for 3 years.
That's what it says. It says a lease shall be for a primary term of 3 years beginning blank 2021 and ending on blank 2024. So does anybody have any dates just by any chance?
Yeah, once there's a vote, they'll be effective. We can't put a date in there if they haven't been voted to approve the agreement. So I guess today is the 28th, so whenever the final date of the lease is, we'll put that in. So
Okay,
that's pretty standard after the vote.
Okay, can y'all send us a final copy?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Let me just say this. It's obvious that you have a lease now. You know what day it's expiring. You don't want a gap in the lease, so you should have those dates to plug in now.
It'd be January, okay. So to be clear, it'd be January 1st. It'd be January 1st, to be clear.
Oh, it's January, so we,
Right.
this should have been
Right,
presented.
we should have put it in December, well, November, because December, it still would have come in January. So we took the time with both the parish attorney and the port attorney, and once they finally got it to us, we submitted it for introduction at the previous meeting.
Thank you.
So you can fill in the blanks with January 1st, 2021, and then adopt it today's date, 2021? Is that what we're doing, or are we just?
Commissioner Black?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're not going to entertain any discussion with the parish government, with the administration as far as the clerk and the assessor occupying Popich. Has that been discussed any further since we talked about it last? And if not, or if so, does anywhere in this lease, because I'm looking through it now, does it allow us as a port commission to end the lease at any time? I think there's a.
I don't know if that provision's in there. Huh? That's not it.
Well, let me say this.
Well, the council and the board are the same, so there's an agreement for the board to end the lease.
Realize it today.
You understand that? I'm just asking the question whether or not the attorneys who drafted the lease agreement have a clause within the lease agreement that one body or the other, I know we're the same body, but we operate with two separate hats, is that if we wanted to end the lease, is there any issue with ending the lease early if we decided?
I don't know if that provision was put in there, and I don't see Rennie here.
I'm assuming we can come back and amend that? Is that possible?
That's the question, because we have it on the agenda in the council meeting as well.
Right.
I just thought that we were going to investigate a little bit further
It's a good question.
about using the Popich building for the clerk and the assessor so we can vacate the entirety of the property at Main and Avenue G.
I think that's
know
a
that.
discussion with the parish president, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if the,
We'll defer this item for now then.
We can,
Randy there.
One point I'd like to make is that this,
I can't hear you, Benny. I don't know what's,
one point that what this resolution does is authorizes the president to negotiate the lease, which means that he does have some flexibility to change it and bring it back to us. And my recommendation would be that if he does make some changes, he at least put some utilities in this lease. When you look at what the utilities are being paid for that building, if they're gonna stay there. The second floor is vacant. I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about, utilizing the second floor or not, but,
I mean, that's a couple issues, yeah. I mean, there are no utilities involved or repairs involved in this particular lease agreement. You know, that's not clear. I think the port administration has paid previously for some repairs, if I'm not mistaken. You know, where is that in the lease agreement? If the council, like we discussed before, I know we didn't really have a vote on the matter about moving the port administration, utilizing the Popich building entirely for the clerk and the assessor. Could we vacate the lease from the port if that was to come to fruition then? There's a lot of questions. I do agree with you, Mr. Russo, that it is just a resolution authorizing the port director to negotiate, sign, and execute. But I just want some assurance from the port administration, and then as well as the parish president, that the attorneys will get together and actually do a negotiation and come up with a better and more structured term or lease agreement.
Is this going to have to come back to the board for the final approval? Or is this the final?
This offer, that's the thing, this allows them to negotiate it and then sign it. But they can negotiate it based on what it says, and we'll never see it again, and they'll just sign it without us seeing it again.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman said he'd defer it. We can do that if the board feels so.
We'll revisit this next month, early.
Yeah, I mean, if you can just direct them maybe to keep you apprised of negotiations and what the plan is, to be more specific, and then we can just authorize something that's a little bit clearer then. I mean, I would like to see them move, honestly, out of that building, and I'd like to see that building utilized for the clerk and the assessor. And then the port, you know, like I said before, potentially purchase the property at Main Street and Avenue G. So I just want to make sure we're not boxing ourselves in if that becomes a possibility.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Rennie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I missed the,
here we go.
I missed the whole discussion, but, so I'm not really sure exactly what we're talking about. This is the same lease that we entered into when they first came, when they first leased the building. So basically, we took the same lease and did it. The other thing is, you guys are the governing authority as it relates to property for both the port and the parish government. And so to the extent that you all want to do something, once again, you're negotiating with yourselves. So, you know, if you want to, you know, if you want to kick the port out at any time, you can kick them out. If you want to make them pay for something at any time, you know, you can amend the lease, you know, I mean, so I don't know, you know, I don't know what the specifics are that you guys are looking at, but.
Specifics is in the preamble of both resolutions. It's a resolution authorizing the port director or his designee to negotiate, sign, and execute and enforce the attached lease. On the council side, it's the same resolution, but it's a resolution authorizing the parish president to do just that. So it is the administrative bodies who are authorized to do so, not the council members. I understand how.
Well, you can take out the word negotiate and just authorize us to execute it and sign it as is. If you don't want us to go beyond or negotiate anything beyond the lease. I mean, I don't think Mr. Rathburn and I both looked at the lease, approved it, so there were really going to be no further negotiations. I think the price was in there and the lease speaks for itself.
What does the administration plan on doing with the second floor?
You'd have to talk to the parish president. I don't know.
All right. I mean, I think that's, you know,
We'll go ahead.
discussion that needs to be had around these buildings.
Tell you what, Bo, if you would like to, you know, set a meeting where we could actually discuss it, I mean, I would be, you know, happy to do that. And we'll go ahead and just defer this for now, and we'll revisit the next meeting next month.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's fine, but I think you know my intent. I think I've mentioned that before at the budget hearings when I said that, you know, a good plan of action would be to utilize the entire Popich building the second and third floor for both the clerk and the assessor, vacate the entirety of the property since the sheriff is moving out of the lockup on Main Street and Avenue G, and have the port purchase that particular piece of property since it is river frontage. It is close to the ferry situation and to their dock and to the port's dock.
I think it's
that would be my intent and my goal. I would hope to have some support from other council members and commissioners, but if you want to have a meeting to just discuss that, that's fine. Sure.
I think it's a good idea, and
it is Dr. Gooey's district and Mr. Albrow's district as well, so I asked to invite them as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
We just had a preliminary meeting with Mr. Richard. We've given him a list of properties, and I think this is kind of part and parcel what he's supposed to look at, right? Look at the building, determine the best use of the building, and make a recommendation either to sell or lease or, a combination thereof. So,
did he review this lease?
What's that?
Did he review this lease?
No, he would not do this. Well, no, he's not involved in this lease, but I guess what I'm saying is if you all decided to take his recommendation, you're the governing body of both the government and the port. You're going to say, sorry, port, we're moving you over here, and we're going to terminate this lease, and we're going to sell it based on the recommendation of Mr. Richard, or he's going to say, continue to lease the property.
Well, let's get Mr. Richard involved in this particular discussion.
Certainly. If you would like to set a meeting for early next week, I'd be happy to attend and help shepherd this in the right direction.
That's fine.
Mr. Russo.
Yes, and along those lines, since Mr. Richard has been brought aboard, we were informed that we were going to have a meeting with him. So I think it would be prudent to have Mr. Richard in the meeting with the council members as well, because he can go out and do a lot of legwork and then come back to this table and not get a vote.
So the parish president has instructed him to call each of you. I don't know if he's reached out to any of you yet. He was waiting for well, I'm not saying he was waiting for anything, but we were still calling through the list of properties we had to go through. So we had about a 1-2 hour meeting. Nothing was said, nothing was determined. And the parish president did instruct him to call each of you because obviously we can't do anything without y'all anyway. So that is still the premise we're working under.
So could you provide us with a list of the properties so we could call through it as well?
Yes. Well, the list we had, I think, had a lot of properties that we're not interested in doing anything with. So like a firehouse or a fire station. So we're going through calling. We had a list that Ms. Libby drafted. We got a list from the assessor's office. We had a list from the legal department, and GIS had a list. So we're trying to combine all those lists and identify all the properties that we're currently not using or occupying them, and then handing those over to him and beginning that process.
Right, but the point goes further than that, because we are utilizing some of the buildings right now, and
I got a clue.
if you would extract.
I just want to bring us back to the item at hand,
All right.
which is the lease.
I yield. My point is that would you please include us and give us a list, entire list of the buildings and properties that we're talking about? So if one councilman versus the other councilman has an interest in, as Mr. Black has, it's occupied.
Yeah,
So if we follow what you're saying, it wouldn't be on the list. But let's move forward with our entire list and get input from us. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're basically speaking the same language here. I mean, we're at the point A of this whole process. So that's where we were, and I suspect that Mr. Richard will be reaching out to you all very shortly. I'm in the process of working on that agreement and bring that to you all to approve that agreement. And so I expect that agreement to be finalized within the next week or so. And obviously, once that's signed, the ball really starts to roll.
Thank you very much, Rennie. Moving along.
6D, a resolution authorizing and directing Maynard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to enter into an employment contract for services as Deputy Port Director between the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and Paul Matthews, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Mr. Chairman, I do have an email to read for comment.
Please do.
From Mr. Donald Valet, 109 Nancy Court, Belle Chase, 70037. Public comment. Recently, we have seen substantial plans for the Port of New Orleans on a $100 million expansion on its Napoleon Avenue container terminal, and the announcement of plans to acquire and develop the Violet Dock site from the St. Bernard Port Authority with funding from the LADOTD, which directly competes with the viability of the Plaquemines Port site. The feasibility study and memorandum of understanding from potential developers on the Plaquemines port site have not been completed and are crucial to moving forward with the current direction of the port. With the recent changes in Washington directly affecting the oil and gas industry, specifically the effects on the Mississippi River, the direction and strategic plan for development of our port is now in jeopardy. Current plans have not been made as visible to the public, which raises the question whether the time and money spent is justified. Public concerns have arisen around the management's ability to perform with existing strategic plans. I suggest that the council require that the port director furnish a revised and updated strategic plan to the council within 90 days. In the interim, I would recommend the council place a moratorium on any contracts, hires, acquisitions, and capital expenditures until such approval. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Barb. All right, are there any comments from the board?
Yes, the offer.
Is item D up, 6D?
Yes, sir.
If earlier we received a blue packet with an amended contract, I think everyone has that. On page 3, the change on line 70, page 3 will read for a period of 1 year rather than what was previously put in. So that's part of the change. And then before I introduce, if we would go to the actual resolution itself.
Excuse me, Councilmember Gooey, can I just clarify something?
Yes.
Your assistant should have put everything in your packet. I did it for you, we did it for you because your assistant wasn't there.
Okay, but do they have the
They
contract?
should all
I mean,
have it,
the
yeah.
contract's there, so that change would be in that contract?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. The resolution itself, if you go to pay, there's only one page, line 18. At the end of that paragraph where it says Plaquemines Parish Council, delete the period and add for a period of 1 year, commencing May 1st, 2021, and ending April 30th, 2022. And with those two changes, I will introduce. Ask for a second.
Second.
I'm open, go ahead.
On the change, was there not another change that was?
Your microphone's.
You're on.
On the change, was there not another change in there that, on the non-compete clause, deleting it from 2 years to 1 year?
In the contract, page 3, line 70.
Also on page 4, Commissioner Gooey.
I'll remove my second. so you can
Line
make the changes,
88.
please.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely right, page 4.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sure the language is the same on everyone's contract. On page 3, line 70, it went from 2 to 1. And then on line 88, on page 4, it went from 3 to 1. I don't know why it was 2 and 3, but
I'll second the change.
it's all 1 now.
Offered by Gooey, seconded by Black. Are there any other questions from the board?
I'll wait till, after I hear some comments.
All right, comments from the audience? All right. Afternoon, Mr. Henry. Please state your name and address for the record.
Arthur Henry, Bell Chase. Listen, could you tell us some of the public, what's the financial specifics of this contract? I understand it's a 1 year now, but what's his salary? Let the people know, man. We gotta keep everything so secret. Man,
That's public.
what is the public?
Ready? You done?
Yeah, let's roll, let's roll.
What do you want to know? The salary?
Yes, sir.
$120,000 per year.
How much?
$120,000 per year.
For 1 year?
Plus benefits.
Which is the same it was last year. Hasn't changed.
It's 2017, sir.
Since 2017, it hasn't changed. Anything else?
Yes. Is there any incentive in that contract where he can make more?
The only incentive is the cost of living increase that's given to everyone. And was that in last year's contract also? Yeah. So the contract remains the same except for the term.
Well, I think this guy should get an increase in salary. I think he should get an increase in salary. I've been checking this situation out for a long time. Here's something starting on the ground floor. And with the Colonel and Mr. Matthews, you're being inclusive. You want to include everybody in this deal. And that's all I look for. That's all I look for. Everybody should have a piece of this pie. They got guys in there who on the board. They're gonna profit directly from this port. I understand that. I don't have a problem with that. Long as it's for everybody to get a piece of this pie. And Mr. Matthew, I've been viewing you for years, man. As far as I'm concerned, you've been doing a great job. We had our differences. But you've been doing a great job, man. And continue to do that job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any other questions from the audience? Mr. Thomas, please state your name and address.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Bobby Thomas, Director of PAB. Dear Plaquemines Parish Port Commissioners, as you know, Plaquemines faces an economic crisis due to the continued decrease in mineral revenues. Recent national news of a drilling moratorium and other regulatory actions further dims expectations of a return of mineral revenues for our parish. Thus, our parish stands at a crossroads in its history. At the crossroads, the greatest economic opportunity has been and remains the development of our port. Today, you will consider and vote on the contract of Paul Matthews. Mr. Matthews has been and continues to be a significant part of our port and its development. Mr. Matthews' employment delivers a list of numerous accomplishments, including but not limited to procured more than $3.4 million in port security grants, funds in the last 3 years, most in the port's history. This includes benefits to the parish, including equipment to PPSO, 911 services, and camera monitoring for the ferries. He initiated relationships with the Port of Memphis, St. Louis Regional Freightways, and Dallas County Inland Port, which has led to an MOU to solidify coordination in the development of a Plaquemines container terminal. He's procured more than $2 million of federal funding to dredge parish government boat harbors. He secured $6,000 a year of supplemental state funding for port fire rescue workers. He streamlined staff organization to enhance the finance department. He established diversity, equity, and inclusion training for port staff. Prior to COVID, revenues were at a record high for the last 3 years. The port entered a design agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers to use dredge soil material to rebuild the parish coast and protect local business, saving the parish more than $2 million in matching funds. He assisted in getting Baptiste Collette deepening through federal regulators. He's worked closely with Venice Port Complex to secure funding for maintenance dredging at Baptiste Collette and Tiger Pass. The immediate future is projected to be significant in our parish history with the groundbreaking of Venture Global and the potential development decision of a terminal. Clearly, now is not the time to change a central and significant part of our port team that Mr. Matthews provides via his vast experience, institutional knowledge, and the accomplishments previously listed. PABI strongly recommends that this commission approve Mr. Matthews' contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. Anyone else in the audience? Back, Mr. Mays.
Craig Meese, Tallgrass Energy, Lakewood, Colorado. I just want to say, I know you guys probably thought I was here to speak on behalf of PLT. I'm actually here for this item. Paul's been a phenomenal partner to our project. He's a great steward to Plaquemines Parish and to the port. Since you said what his income is, I can assure you that he's worth that and more. He'd be it'd be a huge hole. I don't even know how else to say it if he wasn't here with the port. I just got to come up here and say that. He goes above and beyond things that happen after hours, meetings, coordination, et cetera, that take place through a project of our magnitude and size. Paul would be a big miss if this contract was not renewed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the audience? Mr. Pivach, please state your name and address.
George Pivach, 8311 Highway 20. Let me do the best I can. Highway 23, Belle Chase, Louisiana. I'm an attorney for general counsel for the Louisiana Fruit Company, the Venice-Port Complex. I'm echoing some comments made by Bobby Thomas relating to Mr. Matthews. I, too, am in favor of the extension of his contract. I've worked very closely with Mr. Matthews for several years, starting in Washington, D.C., in a lounge about 11:30 one night, as we both were in Washington to secure the approval of the Corps of Engineers for the authorization of the deepening of Baptiste Colette. I'm happy to say we were successful after many years of working together, working with the port. Paul has been the point man to do that we've achieved that authorization from the Corps of Engineers and the federal government. The next step now is going to seek funding and authorization for design, and after that, once design's complete, seek funding to have the Baptiste Colette deepened from its authorized depth of 14 feet to the maximum depth of 24 feet. It's a project we've been working on for multiple years. And I dare say, had it not been for Paul in the last 3 years, we might not have achieved it. He's worked very tirelessly, and we really do appreciate what you've done, Paul. But he's also done other matters for the Venice-Port Complex as it relates to our complex pivoting from the oil and gas sector. If any of you have been in Venice recently, we've lost multiple businesses who've moved out, long-term businesses who've been there 30, 40, 50, 60 years. We're down to one mud company. We're down to a very few other businesses that are servicing the oil and gas industry. And the latest arrow by the Biden administration does not look well for the Venice-Port complex in oil and gas as it relates to the Gulf of Mexico. So we're looking to pivot. We're looking to pivot in another direction. And our obvious pivot is the river. And I've been working very closely with Paul and Sandy and the entire port people in looking for opportunities, seeping opportunities, making people aware of the Venice-Port complex. Because oftentimes people don't think of the Venice-Port complex as a port other than oil and gas. And when they're seeking to do a project in the Gulf of Mexico, they have options. We're not the only option. We're trying to be the #1 option. And with the help of Paul and Sandy and the administration, we believe we can achieve that. So we, too, would like to see his contract extended. Personally, I'd like to see it extended beyond 1 year. But if that's what's before the board and that's the board's decision, I'm happy with it. I just would like to see Mr. Matthews continue on so we can work together to achieve the goal of revitalizing the Venice-Port complex. Thank you.
Mr. Russell.
Yes. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes. I'll probably be the lone voice on this position today, but, you know, after being here for going on my 7th year, I have to evaluate the situation. And on April 23rd last year of 2020, I would have supported a contract renewal based on the adoption of the calendar policy. That policy effort failed at that meeting, therefore, my no vote. That policy was eventually adopted. The implementation was not without months and months of effort and much resistance. The only purpose for that policy was transparency to those board members that actually desired transparency. In my opinion, last year's contract renewal was a probational period to allow for results. To date, I believe we have none. But what do we have? A lot of promises and information being presented to us and the public, And is it accurate? A toll bridge in the works, which Pabi supported, and I can understand why you rallied the troops and come here and support Mr. Matthews, because he carried your water for you in Baton Rouge. The testimony in favor of that project alone is enough reason for me to not vote to renew this contract. This board has been opposed to that project, and direct contradiction to the testimony given by Mr. Matthews. We have also spent millions of dollars on consultants, studies, legal fees, etc. Few results, if any. The comments that I'm hearing today on his behalf, I've been hearing for 7 years on the port's behalf of the administration, and it continues under the new leadership of Mr. Matthews in that department. We've also bought appraisals that were based on assumptions, some not even accurate, causing inflated property values to be presented to us. These properties were presented to us for purchase at inflated prices based on appraisals with assumptions throughout the appraisal process that were put in during a 1-year period of time. We have been locked into only one location for development. This administration refusing to even consider locations, including next-door properties. And I'm referring to the Magnolia property right down the street, or right down the river if you choose. We have been told that 6-month feasibility studies would determine investors. That time has passed 3 times so far. No known results. The results you see are the articles that the Port of New Orleans and St. Bernard are moving forward with the project, because we failed to consider other alternatives in the area of the East Bank, particularly where rail already exists. We have been told that our project would stand no matter what the competition did. Our project stands above them all, was the quoted project that I've heard for many times. Recently, in the last couple of months, I'm hearing now that there'll be only one container project in this Gulf region. And I believe that. But it probably will not be us, because we closed the box to options. Now we are told there will only be one container port project. Again, where will it be? We are told we are still in the competition. We're going to pass a resolution at the next meeting, which I will support, to say, yeah, let's stay in the competition. What are the results of the feasibility studies that we've already done? Are they going to be presented to us and utilized as investors come and go? Where are the investors? We have been told they were here. We have told we have LOIs. We have been told many things. And I'm going to tell you that for many of these reasons, and I'm going to cut my list short because I realize that the votes are already counted and taken and the contract probably will be renewed. And I understand that. But it doesn't make me feel any better to have to go through a 1-year process almost to get a calendar just to find a little bit about what's going on over there. And I'm really frustrated with the fact that people make light of that because of the fact that, oh, you're worried about a calendar? It's not the calendar issue as much as I'd like to know what they're doing. And when I have to go through a lot of effort to find out what they're doing, and I find out what they're doing is not accurately portrayed to us in the public, it frustrates me. So we're told we have a plan. The plan is unraveling, in my opinion. We need a change. That's why I cannot support the contract today, even if it's one vote. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Are there any other questions from the board? Comments?
Yeah.
Ms. Newberry?
I just want to thank the gentleman who came up and talked on behalf of Mr. Paul Matthews. The public doesn't realize what's involved, what's his job involved. It's not just trying to develop a containment terminal. It's also moving forward with other industry, moving forward with deepening of the river and getting other opportunities here in the parish, where those are things that we're looking into. So it's not just dealing with a calendar or dealing with a terminal that some people feel like it's not coming, but it's more than that. So Mr. Matthews works really hard. I've worked close with Mr. Matthews since I've been here in the past 2 years. This man, he doesn't sleep. He brings his work home 7 days a week. And I just want to thank him for the time he's been here, and I just want to let him know that I support his contract.
Thank you, Mrs. Newberry. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I may?
Sandy, please.
I'm reading a letter on behalf of the Port Office staff. They are on hand today, but we were informed right before the meeting that their status as civil service employees could cause a complaint for petitioning on behalf of another staff member, and I understand that. So I am doing it on behalf of the staff. As co-workers under the guidance of Paul Matthews at Plaquemines Port for the past 4 years, we have truly been inspired by his intelligent, problem-solving, tireless work ethic, caring, and passionate demeanor, and willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done and build a port in Plaquemines Parish. During the history of Plaquemines Port in the early years, Urban Schul and John Pennison tried their best at getting this port developed. When the port started making changes back in 2013 and hired Sandy Sanders, things quickly started to progress. The port has endured many major changes in the past 14 years, and most of the ladies and administrative staff have been working here that entire time. Mr. Matthews, along with our executive director, Sandy Sanders, has worked diligently to attract interest and has been instrumental in the negotiations of new port development projects which will bring in jobs and much needed revenue to the parish, along with many other opportunities. In the midst of a global pandemic, Paul has worked to maintain a business as usual attitude for port operations, ensure the safety of the staff, and continued port revenues. His job doesn't start or stop at the office. He puts in so much more time after hours that we don't even see. And as a husband and father of 2 small boys, I'm sure at times that is difficult, but you would never know it from his selfless and endless dedication to his job as the deputy director. During his time at the port, he has been dedicated to growing the port's workforce in knowledge and volume, ensuring the right people were in the right positions to be successful in doing their part of this port's development. He has worked for the successful passing of House Bill 87, which grants supplemental pay to certified firefighters employed by the port in our rescue boat division. He has led the efforts of promoting 3 administrative staff members. He implemented the port-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion training sessions for port staff to learn how to better understand each other and better ways to communicate with one another, so we all feel welcomed, heard, and accepted. He has worked to implement and adopt new and improved port policies to enhance operations and ensure proficiency and effectiveness. His education and expert knowledge of ports and their operations from his past employment experience and industry involvement has been a valuable asset to Plaquemines Port. Paul was chosen by council for a Better Louisiana to be a member of Leadership Louisiana. He was also chosen for a council for a Better Louisiana that developed the highly respected Leadership Louisiana program that offers participants a better understanding of the challenges facing our state and the solutions that can help move us forward. He was chosen by Megan McCormick, board members of New Orleans Regional Leadership Institute, to be a participant. New Orleans Regional Leadership Institute provides community leaders with the opportunity to identify, collaborate, and address key issues for the betterment of the greater New Orleans region. Paul is a member of various maritime and civic organizations, to include executive committee member of the Ports Association of Louisiana, board of director for Plaquemines Association of Business and Industry, board of director for Global Maritime Ministries, Tulane University School of Continuing Studies Advisory Board, as well as a member of several American Association of Port Authorities committees. To be able to be led by an individual so full of readiness, excitement, knowledge, and courage is a blessing to the staff, the port, and the community. The staff hereby formally and respectfully request that you renew Mr. Matthews' employment contract and help us to finish the job we all signed up to do. Sincerely, Roxanne Pecue, Melissa Morrell, Karen Warren, Erica Brown, and Daniel Rollo, Brenda Lally, and I would like to ask my port staff, with their permission, I would like to add my name, Harlan Sherman, Christy Nielsen, Shombrell Riley. Thank you very much for consideration for this fine, upstanding citizen of Plaquemines Parish and a member of our port staff. He is all that and more. Thank you.
Mr. Black. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I'm very proud to have been a part of the hiring process. I was the chairman at the time of the port when you went through your hiring process, and we had quite a few candidates, and you definitely stood out amongst a very, very talented group of applicants. I'm going to keep it short, but I just wanted to let you know that I know the criticism you take, and you and I serve on a couple different external boards together, and I will say this, with that criticism, Mr. Matthews has never once, I've never heard him once talk negatively about this port, about the employees, or about this board. He has always kept it professional, and I admire that about him, because a lot of times lesser folks would break, and they would use other judgment to take shots, and Paul has never done that. And I've been very impressed by that. And you've come a long way with the development of this port, Paul. I want you to be here when it comes to fruition, and that's why I'm supporting this extension. And I hope the best days are ahead of us in 2021. So you'll be receiving my vote, and I'm proud to have you on board and also as a friend.
Any other questions from the board, from the audience? Please state your name and address.
Elton Frederick, 108 Victor's Road, Belchash. I agree with what everybody said here today. You know, Mr. Matthews is doing a great job, and I believe it that he can get things done. But I also agree 100% with Mr. Roussel just said. You know, and all I'm saying is, you know, I know you're doing a good job and everything, and maybe you can work more on getting some revenue or finding some grants to run our ferry system. You know, it's more important to the parish than parish residents than what you know. You know, and that's all I'm saying. You know, you can do it.
Mr. Matthews, do you support bringing the Plaquemines Parish Ferry Service over to the port?
I don't know about that. That's something that Sandy and the board would have to talk about. But to his comment about any federal dollars, sorry.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly saying, you know, turn the ferry system over to the port, but if, you know, just, you know, if he could do something to, you know, like I said, I agree 100% with what Mr. Roussel said, but like I said, you look like you can maybe do this without, you know, having to turn the whole thing over to the port, you know. But if that'll work, you know, we can do that too, you know. But all right.
Yeah, I would just say this. I sent an email to the entire board a few weeks back as we received information regarding the proposed President Biden COVID relief package. In that package, there was $20 billion for transit funds And I did reach out to Mr. Vitter, and I stated that if there's an opportunity to receive some of those $20 billion in transit funds, which would go to also retaining transit workers, maybe equipment, infrastructure, what have you, there needs to be a focus on that $20 billion, at least some of it, right? Even if it's 1% or 10%, that'd be great, specifically for the ferries. And so that's one of actually our priorities this year, is to go after whatever Congress and Senate and President Biden can put forth in that the next COVID relief package for transit. And the focus would be to get some of that money to go to parish government specifically for the ferries. Again, it's $20 billion, so if we can get anything out of it, that would definitely be a benefit, and that's one of the things we do. We're working with our federal lobbyists.
Mrs. Newberry.
Oh, I really, people don't understand what you do. You know, when there's money out there, you go get it. At least you try to. And it really is a great plus for the parish. You talk about these grants that the port goes out, not just for the port itself, but for the parish. I feel like I get more out of you than I do out of our own president. So thank you for that.
Call a question.
No, ma'am. Richie. No, ma'am.
We've already had the vote, but please come.
Yes, Wyona Kirkland Bell Chase. I understand what everyone is saying, that Paul is doing an excellent job. But I also heard something that came from Mr. Roussel talking about the $1 million that's going to the consultants. And maybe that should be reviewed to put some of that money and maybe cut down some of the consultants' fees to work towards giving some money to the parish that can go towards the ferry situation that y'all dealing with and other situations in the parish.
That's very good advice. Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to respond to you, ma'am. My goal has been to try to run as efficiently as possible. You heard all of the accolades given to an individual today to support renewal of a contract. However, you haven't heard all the expenditures made to those individuals who were critical in making those grants come through, the lobbyists that were paid to make those grants come through, and the millions of dollars that were spent to develop the Deepen in the Baptiste Colette that's been in the works for many, many, many years. And, you know, it's easy to gather all of those projects and hang them on a tree and give one credit for it. But believe me, without a team effort and many, many other people involved, it wouldn't have happened. We were doing beneficial use dredging before Mr. Matthews ever came, and the administration shifted it over to the port. Now, I'm not taking anything against the man as an individual or personally, but the results are not there. We'll see what happens in 21.
Come to the microphone, please.
That's not on.
Please come to the microphone, ma'am.
Thank you. Not voting on that.
About all of the consultants, maybe that should be something they could review, and the lobbyists cut back on all of those, you know, funds or whatever that can help the parish in other situations where it's needed for the livelihood and people that needs it.
Ms. Kirtland.
All right, ma'am, I'm sorry. My colleague, Mr. Gui, Dr. Gui, is saying that we might be out of turn here. I prefer to let the public speak, though.
You can overrule me, sir. I'm just trying to follow protocol, and we were talking about the contract, now we're talking about ferries, so.
All right, moving down the agenda.
Item 7, new business. There are no introduction of resolutions where a suspension is being sought. Number 8, approval of the January 14, 2021 meeting minutes.
Offer it.
Second.
Second by Cognovich.
Who's this?
Russo. Passes 9-0.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Russo moves to adjourn, seconded by Newberry. All right. Passes 9-0.